Welcome to Killer Women with your host, best-selling author Danielle Girard. And now, Danielle's next killer woman.
Welcome to Killer Women Podcast, a proud member of the Authors on the Air global network with more than 4 million listeners. I am your host, suspense author Danielle Girard, and my guest today is Samantha Downing. Samantha is the author of the best-selling My Lovely Wife, nominated for the Edgar, the I2W, Macavity Awards in the US, the CWA Award in the UK, and an award in France. Her fourth novel, A Twisted Love Story, was released on July 18th, available right now for you. Welcome, Sam.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh my God, this is such a fun story. You are just, you have the devilish stories. I love it. So tell our listeners about A Twisted Love Story.
A Twisted Love Story, it really focuses on a couple named Wes and Ivy who are like a tornado and they just barrel through life doing their thing. They are very tumultuous. They're very roller coaster, up and down, break up, get back together. And they're so dramatic that other people get pulled into their whirlwind as they sort of pass by. And other people jump into their whirlwind willingly and try to insert themselves into the relationship. So there are often not so good consequences, including death. So and they just keep barreling on. But now a detective has caught on to this, and they really have to come together, which they have a problem doing, in order to have a united front against their common enemy.
Yeah, to avoid ending up in prison, both of them. It's a funny thing because at first you're like, oh my God, why are these people together? But then you see their tender moments and you think, I kind of get it too. It's a really it's super it's a compulsive read. And I literally I just devoured it. So I'm going to read the dedication. I know you are not going to talk about this anymore because we already had this conversation, but I think I don't know if all readers pay that much attention to dedications. The first things I read in any book are the dedication and the acknowledgments. Like I just always want to know sort of who the book is dedicated to, and oftentimes of course it means nothing to the reader because we don't know the person, and then I want to hear like sort of who helped them. So I have tagged this page because it's so fabulous, and it says, for the man who inspired this book, you're damn right I wrote about you, which I literally laughed out loud. And then I thought, okay, I am all in. This is so fun. And one of the things we get to do as writers, right, is to incorporate. I mean, this isn't obviously a real story. It's totally fiction, but you get to use our emotions, our frustrations, our actual experiences in ways that are really, really fun. So I imagine people will have questions about that and you will get to deal with those in your own way. But can you tell us like sort of where the spark, I mean, aside from obviously some spark of experience in this, what was how did Ivy and Wes come to be in your brain? Like how do you develop a story when it's happening?
What I wanted to do in this book, my goal was really to make their relationship a character, because they are individuals, but when they come together, they become something else. And that their relationship has its own characteristics. And it's not the only relationship in the book. All the supporting characters have relationships or have had relationships that make them who they are. And so love is actually a character in the book as well. And the good, the bad, the ugly, all the ramifications of what comes from that. But specifically for Wes and Ivy's relationship, I wanted it to be I wanted to represent it in a very extreme way, but I wanted to show how sometimes couples isolate each other and it becomes
Yes.
all about each other to the exclusion of everything else. And every couple goes through this, at least in the beginning. That person is their everything and everybody else is thrown to the side. And the same is true for Wes and Ivy, as well as the influence other people have on our relationships. We think a relationship is between two people, but it's not true. People have opinions, people have ways that they act around you that may be different, and all of that comes from their place, what they've experienced, and it is not in any way objective. It is never objective.
No.
So you have to, so a relationship is really its own thing, that is like a living thing to me, and that's what I wanted to do, and I wanted to make a thriller about a relationship.
Yeah, I mean that's true. So, Ivy's best friend Heath is a big character. And I think this is true. We've all seen friends get into relationships where we're like, this doesn't seem like a good idea, right? And you sort of try to help your friend extricate him or herself from a relationship that seems toxic, right? And yet, of course, Heath's not living inside the Wes and Ivy relationship. So he can't see, where the positives all are. All he sees is sort of you know the destruction, and their relationship is quite, like you said, it is a tornado. It's very volatile, and if you're the friend of one of them, you want to sort of do your best to protect them. And Ivy's own backstory is quite interesting, right? Her parents are in prison because they were weed growers, and even though weed is legal in California, of course you can't, not just anybody can grow it and sell it. So that of course has a lot of impact on her, what she wants from a relationship and what she takes from their marriage. And they're in to make it even more heartbreaking for her parents, they can't communicate with each other, right? They're completely isolated from one another. So anyway, that is absolutely right, and you do a beautiful job. And there's other characters who come into this, is not at all, they are not isolated in the story. And I love the way you've woven in sort of and I won't go into the detail because you have to read the book, but this sort of extraneous characters at Wes's work, or the guy in the bar, and the way that those people also become real characters in this relationship. And super super powerful, and feels very, for being like, this, it is, I mean, in some ways, like, right, it's a thriller, it's a really fast read, and you're running with it. And then there's these moments you're like, God, this stuff really happens. Like, it feels very genuine, and there's universalities about it that even those of us not in relationships like that can absolutely identify with, which I think a really powerful thing to be able to accomplish. Sam, I love that you did that.
Thank you. Well, I've noticed from people who have read the book, early reviewers and early readers, they are bringing themselves to the book as they read it. It's reminding them of things either personally or that they've seen their friends go through. So that's another example of how nothing is ever objective. People are bringing in all of their own experiences to just reading a book about people who are fictional, who they don't
Right.
even exist, the same way we do when we watch a movie or a TV show. It's not real. We know it's not real, but our experiences color our opinion of it, or our feelings about it, or what it personally brings to our memory, all of that.
Exactly. And really, that is sort of when you read a really good book, you are in it. You are there with the characters. You are reacting to their decisions, like, oh no, don't do that, or oh thank God, or whatever. I mean, it's a really fun experience. It's what makes reading so enjoyable. So tell us about
Absolutely.
how you work these stories. When are you a plotter? Are you a pantser? You start with sort of like an inciting incident, sort of, what's your process? It's if you don't mind sharing that with us.
I am a pantser, and I don't plot anything. So in this, I knew that I wanted this tumultuous relationship, and then I created the two characters that are in it, and I just start writing, and I just let it go, and it comes to me. And then I knew it was going to start with a detective, that there was going to be a detective coming to Wes's office in the first chapter, and that things had gotten to a level where the police were involved. By the time we join the story, they're already there. So I don't plan anything. I just write it chapter by chapter. And I found that for me is creatively better, because each chapter leads to a new idea. I have to write it to have the ideas. I can't think it out in advance. I'm not enough of a chess player to be able to think 100 moves in advance. If I try to do that, the ideas aren't as good in my mind.
Yeah, I'm the same, and it's nice to hear from another pantser, because I do talk to plotters and think, God, it sounds so much more efficient and so much maybe like more comfortable if you knew where you were going. But I also find that this story has to sort of be organic, and it's only organic if you actually don't know where it's going. So do you
Mhm.
ever find yourself like you're writing and writing, and all of a sudden you realize, oh God, I made a wrong turn? Are you, or did you just sort of feel like you're taking the time you need as you're writing to really know where it's going, and so that you end up with a story that works at the end? Because I oftentimes feel like, oh crap, I went way off the wrong road, and I have to sort of back up again.
Oh, it happens all the time. Sometimes I fix it, sometimes I throw the whole thing out. So I throw out books all the time. In fact, I did not have a book come out in 2022 because I threw it out. And so now I have a book coming out in 2023, and I just threw out another one. So I don't think I'll be having one come out in 2024.
So that is so hard that you get to the point where you've written an entire, basically a big part of a book or a whole book, and realize it doesn't work. I mean, we have a lot of aspiring authors on the who listen to the podcast, and I think it's a really valuable thing for them to hear. So tell us about. I mean, as painful as it is, tell us what that's like, and how do you sort of how do you do what do you do, and how do you recover, and how do you gear yourself up to start again?
Yeah, for me, it depends on how strongly I feel about the idea. If I feel really strongly that I want to write this book, I may start it all over again and try a second time the same idea. If I don't think I can make it work, or I don't think it's really a story I can tell properly, I get rid of the whole idea and try to think of something else. Um, Now I don't. Sometimes I get through the entire book. I know within the first 5,000 words, it's not for me. It's not working. It's not, something is wrong. But typically by around 20,000 word mark, I know if I have a path forward. I know if the story's opening up enough, if I have enough to fill and because some stories are just ideas. Is it really a book is the
Right.
question. Um, some are better as short stories or novellas, and they just can't be big enough to be a book. So a lot goes into it. But yeah, I throw out stuff. I throw out far, far more than ever makes it to publication. Hundreds and hundreds of thousands of words get thrown out.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I think that's the reality of the business, right? Are you somebody who has a lot of ideas? Like, do you have a place where you store ideas, or is it sort of one at a time, and you just have to kind of go back to the drawing board?
No, I like to sort of strike when the iron's hot. So if I'm excited about an idea, I will sit down and start writing it and see how long I should get more and more excited as a book. And sometimes that happens, and sometimes it completely fades. And I think, no, I'm not interested in this idea at all anymore, and I get rid of it. So
Yeah.
it,
Do you
it
have a, do
just
you,
it, it sometimes it grabs you, sometimes it was just an idea, and then it didn't go anywhere.
do those ever sort of reemerge, and like a year down the line, you're like, there was that idea, and now I think there's something else with it, or it's just dead?
Um, it's typically dead. There might be a new angle to it.
Hmm.
But some ideas are every idea is not for every writer. I might have a great idea, but it just may not be the book for me to write.
Elizabeth Gilbert talks about that in her book Big Magic, right? That it like lands on your shoulder, and if you take it and run with it, it's yours, and otherwise you just let it go onto somebody else who can write it. I think she had an experience with, maybe it was with, oh, I can't remember. Maybe it was actually Ann Patchett and Lucy Foley. I can't remember, but at any rate, or not Lucy Foley, but Lucy. Um, oh, I'm going to get it wrong. Greeley. Anyway, yes, I think that is a really I think that's a really fair statement. So, um, I read My Lovely Wife, which I loved, and also your novella, Sleeping Dogs. And I missed the one she started it, which I have to come back to. But they really deal, your books really do deal, in large part about relationships, and not necessarily, healthy relationships, but real relationships, which aren't, of course, always healthy. This is obviously something that interests you. Do you feel like this is sort of the origin for your writing, that you sort of are exploring human nature and how we interrelate, or it's just what you gravitate
Well,
towards?
I think that relationships are really the heart of most domestic thrillers, and that's what I
Yes.
write. I don't write police procedurals or you know, detective chasing serial killer. I don't, that's not my story. Mine are domestic thrillers, so they take place within the home or within a neighborhood, and the relationships are where the problem comes in. So and I think that's the most vulnerable place for a human, is with the people they're closest to, and then betrayal is always part of it. That's
Right.
what
That's
we
right.
do as so it so yeah, there are always relationships, and it always has something to do with them in my thrillers.
Yes, I think that's totally right. And I love that. And like you said, I think in each of your books, the relationship is a character, which isn't always true of domestic suspense, I don't think. But I think the way,
Mm,
the way you write them, and even in like Sleeping Dogs, which really is about, a woman who's a dog sitter, but there's the relationship between, the couple that's divorced and the dog is shared between them. That's also, which is really interesting that you do this in a way where those people don't even relate, because the whole story is from her point of view, and yet we get a sense very much for what their marriage was. And I think that's, it's a new way to actually read about a relationship. And not, most times when we read about a relationship, we are in the point of view of one of the, one or both of the members of the relationship, but in that we're really looking at it from an outsider's perspective, which I thought was really clever. So that was fun too.
well,
And it's always
right, exactly.
and it's always fun to read a novella, because it's like it's like a little piece of candy. So I wonder, did you think that would be a novel, or did you know from the beginning that was going to be a novella?
No, I knew it was going to be a novella. I wrote it as a novella. It was sometime during the pandemic, and I wanted something short to write at the time, and something that would be different, a little different than what I normally write.
Yeah.
Um, and I guess it could have been a novel. It could have been far more intricate and complex, but it was definitely written specifically as a novella.
Yeah, and it works. I mean, some things I think, it's, you can stretch them into a novel, and I know that I can imagine, like with The Neighbor, there were opportunities to make that into something bigger, but it works really well as a novella. So do you have are you show up at the computer every day? What does your sort of writing life look like?
Every day, every single day. I don't skip. And I write in the mornings predominantly. After the creative part is done in the mornings, I might do some revisions or editing in the afternoon, but when my brain is fresh, I cannot write at night, because I'm just too filled with the events of the day. Weekends too, every day. And especially when when I'm in the middle of the book, definitely. And when I'm trying to find a book, definitely, because
So,
I might be writing a different idea every day.
interesting. So talk about that. That's so interesting. So when you're trying to find a book, you find some little sliver of an idea, and then you just try to grow it.
Yep, exactly. And sometimes I go through 2 or 3 a week and throw them all out. And it's a process that could take a month or two, and just have 20 ideas laying behind me in the dust
And
because
so,
nothing worked, and I didn't.
right. So where do they come from? Do you find inspiration from, reading actual news articles, watching people? Can you identify
Yeah,
sort
so
of?
all of it. I mean, it really can come from anywhere. What I try to do is take something typical and twist it into something else. So in this case, in a twisted love story, a relationship, and make it into something much bigger and much more dramatic than what we normally see, and one that has ramifications that you don't think about. All of my books have, one of the things I always include is the ramifications of your actions. In My Lovely Wife, the serial killing couple, they think that they are keeping it contained, but it is affecting their kids, it is affecting the whole neighborhood. There are ramifications that they're not even aware of. And the same in A Twisted Love Story. Wes and Ivy's relationship has ramifications on other people that they don't even see because they're so wrapped up in themselves. So
Right.
that's always an element of my books, that everything we do has ramifications, and 99% of the time we aren't even thinking about what that might be.
Right. So when you're writing and you're in a book, are you, you're sitting, mornings are good for you. Do you sort of say, I'm here until I'm exhausted, I'm here until I run out, I'm here until I create 1,000 words, or work 2 hours, or 5 hours, or do you have sort of how do you structure your days?
If I'm in the middle of a book, I definitely try to make 1,000 words a day.
Mhm.
Um, so sometimes it's more, sometimes it's a little less, but that's the general goal. I don't have like an hour by hour goal, but I typically work on the word count.
Yeah. Yeah. And some days that's really
Ideally, ideally I have a rough draft in 90 days, and that's 90,000 words.
right. Yeah, wow. And so you're working, that is amazing. So you're working every day, which I actually think there's something really magical about that, right? Because you do have this situation where if you miss a day, it takes a couple more days to kind of get back to it, right? If you're living
Mhm.
in it, it's so much easier. But that's a really hard thing to accomplish. For one, it's just like there are days, I don't know about you, but there are days I wake up and think, I don't want to do this today.
Well, there are certainly days when things that I write get thrown out the next day. I may
Right.
not keep all 1,000 of those words. I mean, which is why it rarely takes only 90 days. There are things that I cut even along the way. I edit as I go. A lot of people don't, or advise not to, but I do. If I change something in chapter 20, I'm going to go back and change everything to make sure it accommodates for that change. Otherwise, all I have at the end is a giant mess.
Right.
So,
Fair.
I continually edit as I go.
And it sounds like you sort of structure your day so that you're like creating new material in the morning when you're sort of fresher. And then, like you said, the afternoon might be dedicated to going back and figuring out how that impact in chapter 20 ripples back to everything that happened before that.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. Well, I think that is really inspirational. I think that's the way, you make a beautiful book is really, it's all in every day, which I think is a
Mhm.
really, I mean, it's a grueling standard, right? It's a grueling life during some periods. I'm sure it's like, oh my God, day in, day out, right? You're living in the book. Those are the people that you sort of spend your days with. It's a funny thing, right? To spend your days with fictional characters, and at the end of the day, to feel like, you know, you're really you're sort of unpacking what you learned about people in that day, but they're not even real. They're not real people, but they're real, of course, to us, and they're real as you're doing it.
Right, exactly, exactly. It's I mean, you have to love to write, or don't be a writer. You better want to sit down and do this, because you're going to be spending many, many hours alone with your computer.
It's so true. It's so true. And do you have, Sam, do you have people that do you plot with, or do you talk through things with people, or is it all happening inside your head?
I no, I do have a writers group. We share our work and get opinions and sort of bounce ideas off. So it's not in total isolation.
Which is, I think that's really important too, right? Otherwise, you sort of, sometimes I think I miss the obvious things until someone's like, well, what about this? And you're like, oh, right. Because you're just sometimes too
Right,
close to it, too close to it.
right,
So,
right.
so this book, it is, and first of all, also I want to talk about how much I love this cover. You have beautiful covers. The what
Thank
in
you.
She Started It, with the woman walking with a shovel, is so great, and the
He
woman with a
started
knife.
it. He started
Oh,
it.
sorry, he started it. He started it.
He
Sorry,
started it.
he started it. Of course he did. We know he started it. But this one I love. It's like she's got a rose. She's ripped the the petals off the rose, or yeah, it looks like she's dropping them. It's a beautiful, beautiful cover. So, I mean, I dare ask, do we know what's you're working on now? Are we
Working
working?
on another thriller, trying to get this one together since I threw one out. So the trying again, but it is another thriller. No details yet because
I
I'm
love
not
it.
sure of the details.
Right, right. Well, you're at it and we love it. And this book is out and it is really, I mean, I think the thing you do amazingly well, and there's all these incredible quotes on the back, you've got slick and chilling, a deliciously clever thriller. I love Samantha Downing's books. It's so true. You really have a style, and people, I can see why people come back again and again for Samantha Downing books. It's so, so fun.
Thank you, thank you. I try to, but I'm happy that people love to read them because I know they're all a little off and a little crazy. So I appreciate
Well,
there are other people that want to read that.
for sure we do. Of course we do. In some ways it's like there's parts of us, each of us, it's a little crazy, and another other side of it is that sometimes it's really reassuring to read about somebody who's just a little crazier than you are, right? Or than you feel.
Right.
When your life is a little out of control, you're like, okay, but at least my life isn't quite this out of control. So
There you
so
go.
I love it. It was so fun to talk to you today. Everybody, you really have to check out. If you don't know Samantha Downing, she's got, now this is her fourth, did I do that right? Fourth
Fourth. Yep.
fabulous twisty thriller and a novella. And if you've already read her, then you're gonna love A Twisted Love Story, because it is definitely a Samantha Downing book. So, and we are going to give away a copy of this beautiful book on our Killer Women page. So look for that too. Sam, thank you so much for joining me today. It's really fun to get to meet
Oh,
you.
thank you.
We've never met in real life yet.
Oh.
Are you going to go to BoucherCon? It's sort of in your neighborhood ish.
Uh, I don't know. Things are
Okay.
I'm still trying to get settled here, so we'll see.
Totally. It's life is hard. Plus, it's Labor Day weekend, which seems like such a strange time. But for those people who don't know, BoucherCon is the World Mystery Convention where writers and fans come together, and it's a really fun experience if you can ever get to one. And this year's is Labor Day weekend in San Diego, which um, sounds kind of lovely to me, since that's by the ocean, and I do not live anywhere near an ocean anymore. So, in the meantime, check out Samantha Downing. Sam, tell us where to find you, website, what's your favorite social media, and where can people look at what you're working on.
Yep. My website, samanthadowning.com. And I am on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter at S. Marie Downing. Again, there's links on my website. I'm mostly on Instagram. I am not a TikTok person yet. So maybe one day, maybe one day, but that is a medium, a platform I don't understand. So mostly you can find me on Instagram. And I also have a newsletter. You can sign up on my website.
Oh, perfect. That's fantastic. And then you can see what she's working on and which story she's put in her rearview mirror already, which is really impressive. I'm gonna take that to heart next time I have an idea that really is not working. I'll be like, well, Sam would just throw it away. So I guess that's what we got to do. And that does happen. So everybody, this has been Killer Women with Samantha Downing. Do not miss A Twisted Love Story, and we will see you next time. Bye.